All right, what's up, everybody? How you doing today?
Hey, hey, man, where you chiming in from?
I'm in Iceland.
Oh man, you could have gave yourself a week off, man. What happened?
I
Miss
don't
me?
I don't want to. Man, I enjoy work. I think somebody said a wise man told me if you find something that you love to do, that it doesn't come across as being a job. So I enjoy what I do. So therefore, that's why I am up at midnight going live with you because we have a very special guest, and I did not want to miss it. I wanted to talk. There's a lot of things going on in the hobby, and I think it's some things that we can add value to the space and talk about. What you think?
Always, always. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. More
Yeah,
than words can describe. Thank you for chiming in all the way from Iceland, right?
yeah.
How's the weather over there, man?
It's cold. It's not that cold, but it's cold. I can't even keep up with what's going on in Iceland. I mean, I feel like literally from the moment I landed was the moment we our vacation started, and I was automatically driving an hour and a half to the city, and we went to oh we go. We went whale hunting or whale watching. Yeah, we went whale watching as soon as I got here.
Okay. Yeah, I saw the picture that you posted up on Facebook, man. I told your wife, man, don't go chasing waterfalls, man.
Hey, look. Hey, I will say this, man. Like, I'm really excited and blessed. I think it's amazing, though, right? So I try to show a lot of things that I'm doing because I feel like through the collectible space, I've been blessed enough to be able to travel the world and see
Yeah.
new things and meet new people and have new life experiences. And I think the special guest that we have on this episode can talk to us about a lot of the different things that he's went through and a lot of experiences that he's got a chance to enjoy. And I think he add a lot of value to the show. What you think?
Uh, for sure. I think any guest that we bring on adds value in one way, shape, or
Facts.
form, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I also think that I'm excited, right? I get excited, and I know that we don't talk a lot on show days because there's a lot of gems that we give once we get on here. But yeah, definitely excited. Definitely like the fact that this hobby, it's not just a hobby for us either; it's a career as well.
yeah.
One thing that I enjoyed about working remote and working from home prior to going full time in the sports card world was that you make your own hours, right? You create your own flexibility,
Yep.
and now with the added benefit, right, the financial aspect of it that the hobby has kind of provided. Now, honestly, you can. It's hard to disconnect, right? Because there's deals. There's all kinds of things happening at any
Yep.
given time or day. Sometimes, you can miss a deal by 5 seconds, and I've done it time and time again. Just because they go quick. But I just want to say, man, it's afforded us both, right? The opportunities to kind of get out there and look at the world. I think I've traveled more this year than I have in the last 10 years, probably combined. Whether it was to a guard show or traveling with family. So definitely excited about the horizon and excited about things to come, man. So thank you for everything, man.
Thank you. That's cool. So look, we got two different streams going on. We have a YouTube stream, and we also have an Instagram stream, and also Twitch and Facebook Live. So shout out to the people who are actually watching on multiple channels, because there are definitely people who are chiming in. We appreciate you guys. I see Baller Breaks 32. I see 813 Investments. I see my boy Downtown Jacob Booms. Card Shark Ryan. I see you online, Bay Area Sports Cards. I see a lot of people chiming in through the Instagram page, but make sure you guys go to the YouTube page. If you really want to get engaged, click and subscribe to the channel, because we have a lot of content that's on YouTube that you guys can actually check out. We may have a couple giveaways through the course of the show. I do have some special giveaways. Shout out to Shimmy Shimmy. I see she just got on. Last week's podcast was crazy. So shout out to everybody that was a part of that. Do you remember that show, Mark? Was
Oh
that too
man,
long ago?
I remember all the shows, man. Last week we didn't have a guest. It was just me and you.
Was it just me and you?
Yeah, remember it was a
Oh shoot.
Wednesday because it was my
Oh
birthday.
no, we had a guest. No, didn't we have somebody jump on?
Not on Wednesday.
Man,
Yeah, it
man,
was
it
me and
also,
you, old school, like old times, man.
man, you know what? Well, that's fine. I was blessed to be able to be here, to be able to have a conversation, and now we have a special guest. All right, so without further ado, should we announce the guest now? Should we go ahead
Yeah,
and bring him in?
let's go, man.
All right, let's go ahead and bring him in. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in Ray Shulte. Did I say that right? What's up, Ray?
No, you got it. You got it. Great. Hey, thanks, Raphael. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate this.
Man, this is dope, man. I ain't gonna lie. This is like, I feel like this is a power session, because hey, let me just read something real quick. This is just for everybody that's actually watching. Let me just read something real quick. So check this out. This is because I don't think I've had anybody come through with these type of accolades. So let me just go ahead and read it. So Shulte Sports has represented high-profile athletes and provided strategic marketing, public relations, social media management, media buying, and corporate consultations for clients such as MLB, NFL, NFLPA, NHL, NBA, Adidas, charitable organizations such as Paul Simon's Children's Health Fund, Don Mattingly Charities, Kids Peace, board member, Maryland, Roberto Clemente Sports City, Puerto Rico, just to name a few. And I'm sure there's probably a couple things I'm probably missing, but I'm just going to put it out there. This guy's done a lot of stuff. He's contributed a whole lot of a nice body of work for the collectible space and for life. I'm not going to just say collectible space, because I think the reality is the way we become more powerful is by figuring out ways to make quality of life for everyone else outside of the space better. I think that's what helps us really take things to the next level, and that's really showing a hobby is more than just a hobby. What's up, Ray?
That's well said. I totally agree with you. And when you've been around as long as I have, you experience quite a few, and I've been pretty fortunate. My initial background was advertising. I was with a large advertising agency in New York, J. Walter Thompson. And that's where I really got disciplined in terms of marketing and promotion, advertising, and from that perspective, I was on a fast track. I was actually in a situation where I was leading up to like account supervisor and VP from the account side, and one of my clients, they decided they wanted to do something with an athlete, and it was my task to go out and find an athlete. And so I went out searching and got Sugar Ray Leonard, and it was for a special product that was gonna utilize a dad and a son, and he had Sugar Ray Jr. And I approached his agent that was in Baltimore, and basically came back with a one-page bio and one black and white photo. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in the business to package and brand and all that. And
Yep.
why aren't the athletes doing that?
They
And
never do.
now of course, Sugar Ray was big back in those days. He was with 7-Up, and he was like one of the most vocal endorsers out there in the world, actually. But it kind of got me thinking, and so I decided that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to package an athlete, and back then, there was a couple of agencies, but they dealt mostly with like tennis and golf and so there wasn't really, and the agents basically it was actually a really tough time for agents, because an agent basically had responsibility for everything off the field for their players, and there was no check and balance, and a lot of players got taken advantage of, and so for me, I decided that's what I want to do. I ran into a friend of mine. My brother, he was a diver for University of South Florida. His friend I got to know, and I brought this up to him, and he said, "Hey, listen, my dad works with Pete Maravich." And he goes, maybe Pete can help you out. And he had no idea what I was coming from, but he just made the connection. So I said, sure. So the next day I spent 4 hours with Pete Maravich in Clearwater, Florida, just talking to him about what my thoughts were. Now, again, I didn't have all this planned. It was just coming out, and it was just kind of like, it was an emotion basically. And so he goes, well, I wish I had somebody like you when I was younger, because I'd be $1 million richer at the time. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that's what I want to do. And he goes, his dad and his attorney were the only two people that he really kind of focused in on. And they had no, they had no clue about marketing. It was all about focus and the game and all that. And so he said, listen, let me introduce you to a guy. And it was a partner of his in a basketball camp down in Clearwater. His name is Jim Krebex. And he hooked me up the next morning. I had breakfast. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to package athletes just like a box of hot cocoa on the retail shelf in the supermarket. And so that got me started. And I went back and he said, yeah, that's great. And so I went back and did a business plan. And about 6 months later, it came down. I presented it. And halfway through it, he said, you're in, we're doing it. And wow. So, but I think I told you this, Raphael. It's kind of surreal in the sense, because at that time, I was walking down the halls and being in an ad agency in New York, I mean, you have the best of the best there in terms of creative and also account. And I'm walking down the hall thinking, why am I thinking about this? These people are 10 times smarter than I am, and they haven't thought about it. And I didn't realize it. And it was just, it's one of those things where you just kind of, I look back, and when I make the move, now that I know what I know, probably not.
Yeah. Hey, I will say this. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done. And I think it's one of those things that I could definitely, you and I both can agree on that. Because when people tell me they want to start their own show, I was like, had I known what I know now about Culture Collision, I can't necessarily say I would have done Culture Collision had I known what I know now.
No. But so, so I started, and it was great, because Pete helped me. He was really, even though I didn't really represent him, but he became a good friend and an inspiration, and kind of guided me a lot. And so, fortunately, his partner Jim Krebex he was All-American. He was like, he won the NIT with University of Texas, but he played basketball in college. But he was representing baseball players. He had about 30 or 40 baseball players, all minor leagues. Wow. And he was still partners with Pete in the basketball. And so one of the guys that actually had come up the ranks and now AAA was Don Mattingly. And so I was being in New York. Jim thought it was great that he'd have, somebody like me being able to kind of work with Donnie and educate Donnie and be in a position where you can, manage his off the field activities and either protect him or enhance his opportunities. And so I was fortunate.
I was gonna ask you a question. I hate to cut you off because you have such great stories, but I just want to know something, because my engagement with athletes as to this day, is the exact same thing. It's like they really only really know the sport. They don't really understand or really know the business of the space, or
Mhm.
what could be, or thinking outside of the box, right? Maybe your favorite football player loves to play Call of Duty, right?
Right, right.
They can get that brand can be big enough to, like, I think Devin Booker just did something where he just did something with Call of Duty recently, but he
Yeah.
plays Call of Duty all the time. And the rumor has it, if he's not playing basketball, he's playing Call of Duty. So I think that is being able to, like, is that something that you feel like is common in your space, that athletes they have a disconnect with trying to figure out things and how to tie brands together?
Well, I always say, and I love telling the story, but I always say that the athletes live in a bubble, and it's the bubble they've created. Everyone's different. Donnie was really focused. I mean, he was a kid from Indiana playing in New York, and everybody's just saying, wow, he's going to be gone in no time because he's not going to be able to handle the New York media. He's not going to be able to do this. Donnie was so focused. I mean, everything was just like focus. I mean, at one point, I was getting, inquiries from everybody, and I would go to Donnie. And again, I had just gotten to know Donnie, and at one point he goes, Ray, hey, listen, I really appreciate everything you're doing, to help me and guide me, but the only place I want to see my name is in the box score. and, and Donnie had a uncanny ability to send messages. And it wasn't, it was in a very positive way, but, I got it. I understood that, but I said to him, I said, listen, I get it. I understand that. But at some point, I want to be able to come to you and tell you about things that are happening that, you don't want to look back 5 years, 10 years and say, I wish you had told me that. Yep. And he said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. And so, so Donnie was one. I mean, Howard Johnson was another. Harold Reynolds was another guy. All these guys were coming up that I was working with. Licensing took off in the 80s. And nobody really knew how to handle it. The PA really was looking at it from, just internally. The players were looking externally. Major League Baseball was like all the above. And so I had to deal with the PA and Major League Baseball. And, that was when Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry and McGuire, all these guys were really, really kind of, looking to kind of expand, but nobody really knew how. And so I got to know these guys really well. And that actually, my relationship with Major League Baseball led me to being retained in 1991 to start the Fan Fest in Toronto.
Wow.
And so I worked on the MLB All-Star Fan Fest for like 10 years. And
that's crazy.
My responsibility was to bring in exhibitors, because we had an attraction it was like a show within a show, where we had dealers in a certain area that were, people that I brought in. And so I worked with them and MLB to make sure it was a cohesive, experience. And that wasn't easy, because, it's a little bit different now than it was then. But back then, nobody really gave, the hobby credit, and for me, to this day, I always tell them, I said, listen, if you don't have the hobby, you don't have fans. And I really believe that,
I like that.
And so, they listen, but every year it's like, okay, Ray, they're coming at you. They want to get rid of that attraction, but
that's crazy.
We survived until like the mega dollars came in. But that led me to work with the I did 4 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowls. I did the NHL, the NBA. At one point, 2 years, I did all 4 sports at the same time. That was amazing.
Let's backtrack. Let's backtrack a little bit, because I know you have a lot, man. You have a lot of stories, man. I want to backtrack a little bit for the people who are watching. And so, all right. So for me, is this, because I have questions myself, because people always ask me, how did I get into doing a show, right? And I told my story.
Sure.
You've literally talked about starting your own agency to now you're creating your own like festivals and like card shows, or like the vendors that you had at your shows? Like, what was that about? Like, talk to us
Well,
about that a little bit more in
yeah,
detail.
yeah. Let me give you a little more clarification on that.
Go ahead, Mark. I'm
Uh,
sorry, I'm talking too much.
it was a Major League Baseball event. Like it was a fan fest, which means that they had all their sponsors and all that. We, meaning me, I was just a small integral part that brought in collectors and licensees into that event. So
Gotcha.
it was mostly, that was back in '91. I remember Richard McWilliam was, I mean, that was when Upper Deck was hot, and they were blowing it out up there in Toronto. But we don't have the fan fest that we used to have, and anybody out there that attended one of the shows back in the '90s will attest to it. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Let's bring it back, man. Let's bring it back. I'm down to bring it back. Let's make it happen, man.
Well,
Let-
but
let- Tell them we want to be a part of that. You
yeah,
got the
but
homer
now,
over there, Mark. Mark's a homer, so Mark wants to bring it back too. I'm sure he does.
but we did Fan Fest. I must have worked in, gosh, every venue from Philadelphia, Dallas, Vancouver, LA, Tampa, and that was great. But just getting back to the athlete side of it, because this is the thing I love, is that they are in a bubble, and it's like I try to explain to people that it's like, for me, that it's a 24/7, 7 days a week. Really, you have to be on, and to them, 9 o'clock on a Saturday night is just like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. There's no difference, you know? And so you get calls at 9 o'clock at Saturday night, and it's not like, I'm sorry I'm calling you. That's just the way they are, and you have to be prepared, because you don't know if there's something you have to deal with. You need to, maybe there's an emergency you have to deal with, or whatever. So you're always got to be on. But yeah, like, there's a difference between like Cal Ripken, Don Mattingly, and
Yep.
and the other players too, and how they they look at it. But even today, even with I still work with Donnie, Buck Showalter. I work now with Dave Stewart and a few others, but I still have to. You have to be on and available and ready to deal with whatever comes your way. And so it's interesting.
I was gonna say two things before I let Mark talk, because I know Marcus hasn't said anything yet. First of all, in baseball, in high school, I played shortstop for baseball. Right?
Lies.
You were a big Jeter fan. No, facts. I played shortstop baseball. Right? Favorite player was Cal Ripken Jr.
Yeah.
No lie. That was my favorite shortstop all time.
You don't even know who he played for, man.
I'm a White Sox fan. I had to know he played for the Orioles. Okay, are you kidding me? I had to see the man every year. Okay.
What is Cal Ripken's greatest achievement? Just while we're on Cal Ripken,
He's the Iron Man. He's the Iron Man.
All right, man. I'm
Iron Man. He played
on this one.
Raphael, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, so I'm a White Sox fan. So my Carlton Fisk.
Sure.
Like, Jermaine died. Like, when we won the World Series, Jermaine died, but Carlton Fisk was older than that. That was the guy I grew up watching. I was like, oh, yeah, the catcher is my guy. But, yeah, back then, the White Sox were supposed to win a World Series every year, almost every year, until we finally won. But those were my, childhood things. But the other aspect of it was, I wanted to say to you is, I want to talk to you about event after Mark ask his question is I want to find out what is the connection to the largest trade show in the nation, which is the Nationals, right? Because as I'm looking at all your accolades, there's a lot to say. There's a lot to ask, questions that I have to ask, but I know I got to let Mark speak, but you can go ahead and answer. Go ahead.
No, it was just going to, because I've been looking at the bio, and thank you for sending that over. It's quite an accomplishment of all the things that's listed here, and just with all the different organizations and people and rosters of athletes that you've worked with. One of the names that sticks out, and obviously you started working with the estate after he passed away, but Tell me about your time spent with the Roberto Clemente estate and how that interaction was. That I mean, obviously that's the one that kind of sticks out the most to me. I mean, a lot of the people that are here are just great human beings, right? I mean, I'm looking at the people that you kind of attach yourself to, and I mean, they have a Roberto Clemente Award, which is given out to one of the
Mhm.
best environmental people for each league. So just a little bit of insight on that and how how your interaction with that estate and that family. Some experiences for that, if you don't mind.
Sure, no, absolutely, and you bring up a good point because '91 I started. I started with MLB and FanFest, and then when the All Star Game went to Pittsburgh in '94, that's when I got to meet the Clemente family. Now they knew of me and I knew of them because we had crossed paths. We knew the same people. But once the All Star Game, let's say about 6 months prior to the All Star Game in Pittsburgh, they asked me if I'd come on and kind of help them, and it wasn't
Mm,
really come in and represent them. It was more kind of give them guidance. So a lot of the things I do now for the national. I mean, I can't tell you how many corporate people come and say, "Hey, how do we maximize this opportunity?"
mm,
But back then it was really I fell in love with the Clemente family, Mrs. Clemente, the three boys. They were just so authentic. They were just so real. Pittsburgh loved them. I was already working the All Star Fan Fest in Pittsburgh, and so we just kind of like evolved, and like so technically after the All Star game, I started representing them from anything that had anything to do with licensing or relationships. I mean, I was very fortunate to deal directly with Major League Baseball on the Roberto Clemente Award, and back then I dealt really closely with Chevrolet. And we'd have meetings, and we talk about how do we continue his unbelievable legacy. I got to do two golf tournaments in Puerto Rico in conjunction with American Airlines and Roberto Clemente Sports City. That was very rewarding too, because we got to invite a lot of Roberto's friends and Manny Sanguillen and a lot of guys that still love the Clemente family. So it was a blessing, and even today Roberto Jr. It was funny because I kind of wanted to help him too, in the sense that I think he still is one of the most talented on-air people, voice, knowledge of the game, all the above, and so I got him to work with the Yankees in their broadcast, the Spanish broadcast, and so those are things that I see challenges, I see opportunities, and for them, there was a lot of opportunities.
mm.
And unfortunately, Mrs. Clementi's passed away, but the legacy will always live on. He's just too great a humanitarian and unbelievable player too.
Yeah, for sure.
Correct.
Thank you for that anecdote there, man. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, so Ray, so I will say this: I find myself going down a lot of the path that I felt like you've already done. Right? You
Mhm.
mentioned you talked about a lot of these relationships. So, all right, so it's kind of this is different for me because most of the time I get interviewed about my success story with Culture Collision, right, or our
Right.
success story with my wife, right, with
Sure.
Culture Collision.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting. A lot of the conversation that you have is a lot of the conversation I'm trying to have with certain sponsors in the space, right? And I say that this is important because I think that like one of the topics we wanted to talk about today was Beckett grading, right?
Mhm.
Beckett grading and how things have changed and how values have changed, which we'll talk about after we finish talking about you. But I think it's important to talk about figure like for people that are like myself that are aspiring to work with different companies, what type of maybe like tips could you give to people like myself who are interested in working with different people? But I mean, I feel like I don't know if people are intimidated by me, or maybe I'll come across as being a little bit too bullish. But it's like one thing about me, and anybody knows, I'm a very passionate person. If I want to work with someone, I'm very serious about trying to work with someone, and I take that serious. And I've reached out to a couple of different sponsors and say, hey, look, I'm interested in working with you and helping you because I see value in what you're doing, and I want to see you win because that ultimately helps us win, right?
Mhm.
What's your approach on that?
Well, I think you have two qualities that kind of, I mean, for me, it's huge. And one is you're authentic, and I think that's so important. No matter who you are, you've got to be yourself, and you can't try to be anybody but yourself, because that somebody can see through that right away. And two, be a sponge. In other words, learn as you are never going to be that old or that knowledgeable not to say I still have a lot to learn.
Mm.
You know, and I think that is so important. And once you start saying, hey, I'm at the top here, man. I'm fine. That's then you should just start walking backwards because you're not. All right.
Right.
And the third thing I think for me that I've always prided myself on is like I look at myself as Switzerland. I don't have an agenda per se, other than I want to complete my passion, which is I love, and I think we've had conversations about this. I love the community. I love the collecting concept. I just forget about trading cards, forget about memorabilia and all that. It's just collecting. I just love
Yeah.
collecting, and
Yeah.
and I think we could do a whole show on why it's different for everybody and how it's important. But and I'll go back, and I've said this many times. Life is all about memories,
Mm.
and
Yes.
the hobby for me creates a lot of great memories. You know, and I've been just fortunate that the athletes that I've represented started to represent. I was kind of like, halfway into the hobby at that time because either I was trying to maximize opportunity for my players when they were active and they're playing, or I was trying to protect them, like, from forged signatures or people taking advantage of licensing and all that. So I was kind of halfway in. I wasn't all the way in, but I was halfway in, and I kind of understood it. And I enjoyed it. Where I think I got both feet into it was with Mike Burkus.
Hmm.
Mike probably was before your time, but Mike was one of the founders of the National. I mean, and not only a founders, but he was one of the most inspirational people you ever want to meet.
Really?
And whether he was working on the National or whether I was in a taxi with him going downtown Chicago. I mean, I was always fascinated. He was one guy. He was the one guy that I'd always loved taking his phone call. You know how you have people you say, "Oh man, I can't talk to him now. I don't have the time." Or Mike was a
That's all.
guy.
Kobe Collector does me like that, by the way.
I jumped every time Mike called because you know he and himself if I had talked about any subject he'd listen. He'd want to help me out in any particular way, and I think that's the kind of thing that you just got to be yourself and go in the direction that people want to talk to you, want to deal with you, want to be with you.
Hmm.
I don't think you have a problem, Rafi, but it's a good thing that you're thinking about it though, because you care. That shows that
Yeah.
you care, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
No, I
I'm
appreciate
kind
it.
of excited that Ralph didn't bring on someone that was going to talk about a new realm of collecting. Every time he brings on somebody new, one time he brought on a guy with hats, and then I went out and bought like 20 new hats. A couple weeks ago, he brought on a great individual that talked about the sneaker market. Right, we're talking about
Mhm.
collectibles now, and I've bought like 10 pairs of shoes in the last week, man. So I'm kind of excited about this change of pace, and I know Ralph has a ton of questions because I mean, like he said, a lot of the path that he's going down right now, a lot of the doors that he's knocking on, you've kind of had that kind of experience, right? Sometimes you knock, they answer, and sometimes you knock and they don't.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I'm excited about, since you've been in this space for so long, we're seeing some events in the hobby, right? One of the things that's happened recently is Anthony Edwards, right? And the impact that he's had on the hobby and how he
Mhm.
grew literally overnight. Based on your experience, what are some of the kind of similar things that have happened in the past that you could remember that have similar aspects and immediate impact in the hobby in regards to monetary value, I guess?
Yeah, again, going back years and years and years, there's so many things, and we look back in that and we say, well, those are fads, those are promotional, ploys, whatever. It's different now. It's a totally different market now than it was back in the '90s. The expectations I think are different. I am not that involved in, let's say, the day-to-day back and forth with modern day trading cards. There were times when I for about maybe 5 or 6 years I collected the vintage cards, the Babe Ruth cards, and again, just going back to my thoughts about what I personally was looking to get out of collecting. I was living in a two-bedroom, really a nice two-bedroom in New York on 84th and 3rd Avenue. And I had all this kind of tchotchke stuff, bobbleheads, photos, all that kind of
Okay.
stuff that just accumulates, right? And at one point, I just decided that I just can't keep going in that direction. Fortunately,
Yep.
I had somebody that it was before his time, and you probably recognize him, Steiner, Brandon
Mm-hmm.
Steiner. He literally came up to my apartment, bought everything, all my stuff
Hmm.
that I had, and then I switched over to movie posters because, again, it was all about the story, and somebody had enlightened me about, the distribution of the movie posters back in the early days, the silent movies, and how a production house would only give, maybe there's only like, maybe 10 or 15 movie houses back in the early 90s, 1900s. And so in order to get the next movie, they had to ship back all the movie posters. So all of a sudden in your head, you're thinking, wow, man, that's limited, isn't it? And that's real.
Yep.
And
I
so
mean,
then you start doing more due diligence and you say, hey, well, maybe this is something I want to do. And people say, well, there's so many. Why don't you collect the new ones, like Tin Cup or whatever like that? That's not my mindset.
oh
That's
yeah,
not
Mm.
what. That's not what I
You're
enjoy. I
into.
mean,
Yeah, I understand.
it's
yeah.
great. It's a great movie, but again, I define collecting as the be and end all. It was. I had to set parameters. I had to say, all right, I want to be a pristine
I say that.
condition.
I say that
Buy
all the
what you
time,
like,
bro.
man. We
That's
say that
it.
all the time. You got to buy what
But
you like.
there's a method to my madness here, right? So it's got to be pre-60. It's got to be sports related. It's got to be USA only, no French or German or whatever posters. Uh, so for me, that's it. And then it's funny now, like today, people say, well, aren't you a little, disappointed that you don't see a lot of movie posters and all these shows? And I said, absolutely not. I like that because it's more of a challenge for me to get them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, I could walk into I don't even see that many at the National, to tell you the truth. But then again, I don't get time to do any shopping there. Um,
Mm.
but the point is that, I like that challenge. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You could have 100 posters that I'd buy if they're in a show. Then it doesn't mean that much to me. But if I
Mm-hmm.
can find,
We talk about that all the time. Like collecting, like true
Stories.
collecting, is something that's lost in the
yeah,
space, right?
it's
In the sports card
absolutely,
space, right?
yeah.
Because it's such a in one hand out the other hand kind of aspect of the hobby, right? And it's sports cards, right? And so everybody's thinking about how do I make the next buck? And one of the things that we talked about a few weeks ago is, well, what happened to all the collectors, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, the time that I grew up in, where it wasn't as accessible to pick up your favorite card, right? Nowadays you can hop on Facebook, you can hop on Instagram, you can hop on,
Golden
you can hop on
UWCC.
eBay now, right?
Yeah.
I remember the time when eBay was barely coming up, right?
Yep.
And they didn't have the markets, shares space that they have right now. And so it's interesting that you say like the thrill, right? The thrill that comes along with finding your grail, right? And I think that that's a word that's used too often now, right? A grail, right? Or even PC, right? When people say, "Man, I'm gonna buy this card for my PC," but PC used to mean, man, you put it in a box and you forget about it every 6 months. You pull it out and you
Look at
admire
it.
your collection. Now a PC can be a 2 minute hold, right? And then it's gone, right? And so actually, I talked to a guy one time and he was like, "Man, I'm looking for a Wimbenyama for my PC." And I'm like, "Okay, right." And it took like 2 extra days for it to come in from
Right.
PSA or something. And he was like, "Man, did the car come in yet?" And the car come in, and I said, "Man, hold on. I thought you said it was your PC." And of course, me and this guy, we've done deals like tens and tens of $1,000 deals, and a couple extra day wasn't going to hurt us, right? And so I said, "I thought it was for your PC," and he was like, "Well, my PC's for sale too." And I was like, "Well, you're that's not the meaning of a true personal collection there,
Right.
then, right? It's just something, right? It's a temporary hold, not a PC."
When I was
Mm.
when I was growing up, my mother used to collect those themed spoons from the airport. You know, you go into the concession area, there'd be like spoons, and be Chicago or San Diego, whatever. And I always thought, what are you doing, man? It's like, but for her, it was her mindset was, when her kids go out and they travel, she wants to connect with them. So she'll ask them to pick up a spoon when they go to
Yep.
Vancouver or whatever.
My mother
So
does it now.
there's a reason behind, and a very good reason. Sometimes you find out, sometimes you don't. But there's a difference between the three of us and why we collect.
Yeah.
Not so much, not a big difference, but a difference, And
Mm.
like all my movie posters I've collected since the early '90s, I haven't sold one of them,
Yeah.
Wow.
and because that's not why I got into it. I got into it to kind of, the movie posters that I had on my walls in New York. I have some of them here on the walls, and every time I look at them, I only have great memories. And for me, that's a reinforcement, and that's what, for me, collecting is all about.
Yeah, I think my wife, she collected growing up. She collected Barbies, and really didn't do it because of the monetary gain that came from it. Now she
Sure.
does have some pretty expensive ones, original in the box. But gravitating off of what you just said, we collect fridge magnets, right, from
Mhm.
every state that we've been to.
Yeah,
So
it's great.
like you said, I mean, there's a collecting, and like it could, like the side of collecting can be lost pretty quickly, especially since now you think about collecting being something because it's valuable. But like you said, it could be just because of an experience, right? Or something that just is fun.
Yeah. So many people ask me about, like, people like that are flippers, and I said to them, I don't begrudge them to do that. I think it's okay if they want to do that, as long as they don't, we don't lose the overall concept of collecting. I
Mm.
think as long as that, everyone
That
agrees that that's, it is what it
that's
is, then it's
that's
fine.
that's that's interesting because I actually wanted to ask you a question in regards to how you feel about the new generation of collectors, right? Um, so so I for a long time I actually used to tell people because that I felt like flippers have a negative stigma. I changed the name to let's say short-term investments, right? So a short-term investment, right? So I made a short-term investment. I made a little bit of money. I keep going. Now I'm
Mhm.
not going to sit here I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. A lot of times I have conversation with some of the younger collectors. I always tell them, hey, look, it's okay to buy and sell cards, make a little bit of money, but it's important to buy a card that you like. Buy something
Mhm.
that you can keep. So if you made thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in the collectible space, great. But be okay with putting a couple cards to the side too and being a collector. And even if it's not cards, that's cool. Collect hats,
Mhm.
buy posters, buy sneakers.
Yeah.
Buy TCG Pokemon cards, right? Buy
Yeah.
something that you feel a connection to, because at that point, that's what makes the hobby a hobby, right?
You
And
know,
it
you
makes
know,
it fun.
you know, Raphael, when I've been doing that, this will be my 14th national. And, you know, in the early days, you know, you walk into the national and you see all these guys, mostly older guys, sitting at the tables on the outside, looking at the boxes, going through the boxes. You know, I think Dr. Jim Beckett still does that every year. Thank God. I mean, I love that. But those were the days when, you know, you put sets together really, and it meant something.
Yep.
And it wasn't like really how much is it worth. It's more like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to set out to do. And you have a game plan, and, you know, whether it's at the national or your show, whoever, you know, you try to, you know, complete it. But you know, in today's market, I think sometimes, and again, I don't begrudge them, but I think sometimes we just get caught up in, you know, trying to 10x the industry, and I don't really know if that's. I mean, I think it's good in some respects, but also too, I don't think it's necessary. I think we're evolving to a point where, you know, this is a really strong market for us, and
I agree.
and I think that, you know, I don't want to put the, you know, press the, you know, the foot to the pedal all the way. I do think, you know, that sometimes we get caught up in situations where, you know, we see sometimes it's failure, but they're not. I mean, it's, you know, everything evolves, and, you know, we just going back to, gosh, how many times, you know, like maybe 5-10 years ago, we're talking about kids, right? And all of a sudden, you know, a lot of other regional shows and local shows were helpful too. But I mean, the national, we brought in Brody the Kid, and Brody was the first one that kind of talked directly to kids and had a voice out there and help really bring kids into the marketplace. To whereas now we have ambassadors at the national, and a lot of them, you know, and I always like to say this, and I appreciate the time. They are not influencers, okay? They are content creators, and with a passion. And the more and more I get to know them, especially like when we were up in Toronto, you know, it's more, and that's what you really want to see, that passion. And you know, in Upper Toronto, there was like a three-way call. There was like, you know, the kids are like 15 years old, and they're like two other kids on the line, and they're not talking about cards. They're talking about music. They're talking about that. And for me, that's what it's all about. That's what the industry is all about. It's not just trading cards. Now these guys have a community of their own, or friendships of their own, based on, because they love cards. So, you know, I sometimes I think, you know, we go too far. And to answer your question, I think we're a really good spot, really good place right now. I just hope people don't get to the point where they're disillusioned, or, you know, things aren't going the way they think, because we're not there faster than, you know, everybody wants us to be there.
Well, that's a great take, because I will say this. I mean, not bringing up, I like to be honest, controversy, whatever you might want to call it, but I want your honest opinion, right? Because I definitely do agree with the fact that I think we're in a better place than we have been in the last 10 years. Whether people will admit it or not, we're probably in a more stable space than we probably have been in the last 10 years. Even with the boom of 2021, it was not sustainable at that price. Prices were changing every week. People were holding cards because they were scared, if I sell it now, it's going to be 20 times what it's worth a week later. Now you don't really see that as much, right? So with that being said, like, how do we, like, with Fanatics coming in and they're saying, hey, we want to 10x the hobby, which is why I wanted to have a conversation with you too. It's with them coming in with Fanatics Con, right? You see what they've announced, so what they're wanting to do, the impact of what the National has. Now, my 2 cents is, I believe that there's enough space to be able to bring in different people who have different ideas about how we should be collectors, and that's okay. How do you feel about the take of what Fanatics is doing right now?
First of all, I appreciate that. First of all, let me say Fanatics has been a great partner for us at the National. Tops has been great. But the way I look at it too, and here's my response, over the last few years, there has been so many local shows, regional shows that have popped up, more than I ever would have expected, to tell you the truth. And nobody ever said, are they competing with the national? And the reason why is because, I think, this is just my opinion, brick and mortar was dominant years before. And I think brick and mortar is still holding true, but these shows are bringing in more people, more potential collectors, because at one point they were just curious, but now they're in there and they got a taste of it, and they're moving at their own speed, but they're there. So we never, I look at it that the local shows, regional shows, are like feeders for the national.
Absolutely.
And we're not saying the national is the be all end all. I mean, it's just that the national is just a place where people can congregate from all over the world. That's all. I mean,
absolutely.
That's basically what a national is. National is not, which is kind of cool. The national is not saying we have to be great or we are great. It's not that. It's the national is the hobby. Okay. In a big picture. Now, having Fanatics comes in, I don't see them any better. I don't see any difference in terms of how I compare the local regional shows to Fanatics. They are capable of bringing in a significant percentage of new collectors.
I agree.
And so for me, and I think for Fanatics, honestly, I think it's been an experience. They're going out and hiring the right people to make it, but it wasn't an easy task, because it's one of those things where you do have to have a game plan, have a strategy, and I think they're doing that. I think the WWE was a good example of how they take a specific event and capitalize on it. That's going to benefit us, meaning the hobby.
I agree.
And so that's a plus. Now, going into the markets, I think it's great. I mean, I know our team feels the same way. It's not a negative. It's more of a, expansion. And we've already had that expansion. You talked about before the pandemic in Chicago. Before the pandemic, we had a really, really strong show. We had a lot of momentum going into the pandemic.
Yep, I remember that show.
People don't realize that how much momentum we had going into the show. I think that was one of the things that helped us through the pandemic, was the fact that it was strong at that particular time. Then we came out of it, and then kind of everyone had their own legs, and everybody was doing really well. Now today, I think we have unbelievable amount of momentum going into Cleveland. And and Fanatics will be there big time, and Tops will be there, and they'll all be there, because it's the hobby. It's not us versus them. It's the hobby, and I think they've got the right people in there now, and I think they're gonna do extremely well.
I'm trying to be there too, but I think it's like a 8-year wait list.
Hey, yeah. So that was actually one of the other questions we wanted to ask for the show. We really want to figure out how can we get tables, but another question. I will say this. I mean, I'll say this as a statement / question. Is there a way for people I feel like, I don't know if it's like necessarily a fair chance for people to get tables, but I do see a lot of the same similar vendors at the Nationals. Is there a way for the newer collectors to be able to have a better chance of getting a table at the show? I do understand the loyalty of the long-term vendors who've been there in the past, but there's people like myself who I've only been blessed enough to have a table one time. And I have to thank God for people like Mary. She was amazing. She I won't say her name. She helped me out, and we're working on keeping something consistent. But what tips could you put out there for new collectors? I mean, new vendors who want to get a table at the National?
No, I get it. I totally understand it. I talk to a lot of the vendors out there too. I get calls all the time, asking. I think the positive side of it is that we have a new management team in there now, and the transition is going extremely well. There's a different mindset. I know these guys, JBJ, Joe,
Joe,
Brian,
Philly
and
show.
Jim. Yep.
Yeah.
And these guys are. I mean, we have conversations all the time, and I know that they're trying to kind of maximize opportunities, and again bring the best possible experience to the hobby as well. So my recommendation is just to get to know Joe and Jimmy and Brian, and kind of lay it out there and talk about. I think I think there's opportunities, but those are the guys that are going to make those decisions.
So basically, we need to take Joe out to dinner and at the Philly show. We got to take out Joe to get him a nice steak, man. There's a couple of nice steak spots out there in Philly. You get a chance.
True story, though. I've never been to a national. Ever.
Never.
I've been in the hobby for over 30 years, and I've never. And I've always said, man, I'm going to go to the one next year. I'm going to go to the one next year. And as I get older, right, I'm starting to appreciate life more, right. And so one thing that I'm starting to appreciate more is that don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today, right. Mm-hmm. And so this year, I'll be there, especially since it's my career. The hobby is my career now, so I definitely have to be there. But I'm really excited about this experience. I mean, obviously you get FOMO, right? Hearing about all the experiences with people at the National every year, right? They talk about if you're looking for those grails, and as a collector, and I've always been a collector at heart, I've been excited about going to this show and finding those pieces that you couldn't just pick up every day, right? You don't see everywhere, right? And so for me, I've always been excited to go. So being that this year is going to be my first year to go, whether as a vendor or just as, someone who walks the show every day, like I said, definitely excited for the experience.
Well, I think, Mark, this is a good time for you to go. We've got so many things that are planned. I mean, normally I'm kind of like in a full op mode. Maybe at the end of May. I started in January. I mean, where it was just like unbelievable. Because of all the things we're getting involved in. I mean, this year we're going to have 3 trade nights. We're doing a dinner for the dealers on Tuesday. We've got which hasn't been announced yet, but it will. It's pretty cool. We're going to have a screening of a documentary featuring Dick Perez, the baseball.
Nice.
We're doing things that we've never really done before, and it's all because it all goes back to that experience, and what you're going to experience once you get there and come out. And I think, I think there's going to be so much more that's going on. I'm working with this is the first too. I'm working with the Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Guardians, Cleveland Cavaliers, all doing marketing promotional plans with them.
Congrats, man. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And it's the first time.
Let's do it. Hey.
It's the first time that we've had all 3 getting involved. Now, I would love to take credit for that, but I can't because it's not me; it's the industry.
Take the credit. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean when you're talking to like the third guy in command for the Browns, and he's telling you his 2 kids are 14, 15, are diehard collectors. It's not a hard sell.
There you go.
There you go. And it goes back to, and it's funny because again, it goes back to if it goes back to like, well, you know what, the kids, the fans, they're the ones who end up having their dads or moms buy the tickets, but those are your fans, and so you need to, you need to engage with them, and these guys get it. I mean, it's like the guys from the Cavs, like, I mean, it's like incredible. It's like they're like 30 years old, but they're diehard collectors, and so those times are changing, and which is a positive thing. And I think that we're in a good position that and I can talk to you, Raph, about maybe doing just kind of the same concept with the guys in Atlanta, where I think it's it's time. It's the right time to make those approachments. Set it out there and make things happen, because now we'll have success stories, and we'll have say, hey, listen, look what these people did. Look at them. You can attribute that a lot to Fanatics too. I mean, because when somebody else sees the commitment that Fanatics is making, and it's kind of like, you've got to think, hey, these guys are gonna they're gonna push the envelope, and it's only going to go up. So I look at it that way too. So it's a positive.
Well, for one, me and Miss PrizmGawds, for one, we appreciate that conversation. I agree, because getting the Atlanta Braves and getting the Atlanta Hawks has been one of the goals that we definitely strive to do. And of course, again, as I read your resume or your accolades of things you've accomplished in your lifetime, right? I look at those things and I look at those conversations that I've had, very similar conversations.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'm like, I'm bridging the gap. Like, this is the first show we've ever had. We have Monster Energy drink to be the first time it'll be a sponsor at a trade show. We've just recently announced that for our September show. This is us bringing in new people to our space, right? And I think a part of that is getting those different. I mean, was it Chris Costa's actually doing that with the Fenway show? That's going on this coming up weekend.
Yeah.
He has a great relationship with the Patriots, the Boston Celtics, and the Red Sox. So we're already forward thinking, trying to make these things happen. But again, it's the relationships that seem to be more of the issue that we run across, right? And so someone like yourself, having the relationships you have, definitely a great bridge to make things happen. And of course, it's for the betterment of the hobby. So I appreciate that aspect of it. I don't want to keep talking your head off. I know we only have a few minutes, because I know it's been really over an hour. So we'll probably get a couple of, probably maybe another 5 to 10 minutes more. If anybody has any questions.
I'm good, Ralph. But just get to your point too, though. I mean, I think you have to understand engagement. And you have to understand, a win-win situation. I always go into every deal making sure that it's a win-win situation. I never take, because I feel like, in order to get through the conversation, they have to understand that there's value for them too. And there is value. If you're creative enough, and if you have an imagination, you have value. You just gotta, you gotta pull it out and make it happen.
Well, a lot of my issues is. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was gonna say a lot of my
I was
issues.
just gonna say, man,
Mr.
Mr. Shulte is the definition of he'll forget more than we'll ever know, man. Honestly, man, and I think, and obviously you're a more mature individual, that we've had, and it's just thank you for allowing us to absorb, just the communication, just the conversation from you. It's always being a person that, I live to learn. Right. And always learning new things is something that I really enjoy. It's actually one of my priorities. Try to learn something new every day. So I know that we're approaching our hour time with you, but I do want to say thank you just for coming on and allowing us to kind of absorb the information. Because believe it or not, it really hits home. And I've been looking down a lot on the show, because I was trying to keep up with Caitlin Clark's first game, and it looks like she came out the gates a little with a little bit of jitters, because she went like 0 for 5, a lot of turnovers, but then she hit a couple threes and she looked like she started to get in a groove. But man, it's an exciting time in sports right now, right? With Caitlin Clark today, Angel Reese tomorrow. You have the playoffs. You have Indiana and New York, first time in a long time, with those two organizations head to head in the playoffs. And man, like I said, I'm just looking at ESPN right now and looking at all the scores. Man, it's just an exciting time for sports right now.
Yeah. No, actually, you bringing that up makes a good point, because it's one of the things I loved about representing players, because I was in a position, like if she's coming out and I haven't watched the game tonight, so I don't know, but if she's coming out, she's maybe a little hesitant, or just she's off their game. That's no big deal. But to have that conversation later, after, and kind of talk it out a little bit in a friendly way. That's what it's all about for me. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations where I'd sit down with somebody, one of the athletes, and I explain to them why they're doing the interview. I wouldn't just say do the interview. I explain to them, that
Why?
this is exposure that is positive, and once they learn, why they're doing it, and they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of, and that it's their value that can be had. That's what's the difference between a guy who just does deals and a guy that really cares about somebody that can mold them and educate them and be in a position where, I mean, like there's no better feeling when Donnie was manager of the Dodgers, when we had an event and he basically, to the whole team, he was on the stage and he introduced me and said, I don't do anything without Ray's, input. But that's over years and years of, being together and trusting each other. But bottom line, that's kind of one of the reasons why I don't have like 30, 40 players, because I couldn't do that with that many players. And
Wow.
that's not what I wanted. I wanted to have that intimacy where I can, make a mark and help. I do the same thing with Buck Showalter. He'll call me and we'll just talk about things. And, whether it makes him feel better or he puts him, in a better frame of mind or puts me in a better frame of mind. That's what it's all about. And I think in this industry, it's the same thing. It's recognizing people and kind of creating that trust and, that you can go to them and they'll give you their honest opinion.
Yeah.
The real honest opinion, not the
How were those conversations with Buck when he went back to managing, man, after being out of it for so long?
Yeah. No, I mean, we talked about him doing a book, and he's got maybe 30 or 40 guys out there, and women too, I'm sure, that are looking to him to write a book. And so we talked about it for about 45 minutes. Now, I can't tell you anything was decided other than we're not going to do it right now. But, it's one of those things you talk through like, hey, well, okay, Buck, well, what about if you go back to manage again? Then, or, why don't you, there's a lot of things that maybe you can't be as specific in terms of your thoughts because you're still in the game,
Yeah.
Things like that. But those are the conversations that I enjoy that, that you don't get, like you don't get with anybody else. And even like when Mattingly was let go by the Dodgers and other situations, I'm there talking to him, kind of working out an understanding, a game plan, a go-to type of situation where he can, better his life. And it's funny because people, and him too, like when people, he does something and people feel sorry for him. He says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I said, I have to worry about it because those people, I mean, you go to a restaurant, people come in and they talk to you and they feel sorry for you. Oh, yeah, I feel so bad. That takes valuable time from your life.
Yep.
So as me, I try to avert that by putting him in a situation where nobody's going to feel sorry for him. Those are kind of the strategic things that you think about all the time, 24/7, 7 days a week.
Wow, that's amazing. So look, I know we're really late, and I'm not gonna lie, for the people who just got on, I am in Iceland, so it is 1:08 a.m. my time, and my flight is tomorrow at around 11 a.m. But I will say this: I'm probably gonna see if anybody has any questions. We have a few people. We lost the Instagram feed, but that's fine because I think it only lasts for an hour. Anybody on our YouTube channel has any questions for Ray or for Mark or for myself, and we're gonna kind of probably speed up and maybe a couple questions real quick. And I love Ray. I would love to definitely have you on in the future again. The one thing I will say this: I'm giving you some much respect because my wife said when you met, I think you met her like 2 years ago at the Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
She said you were one of the nicest people she's ever met in the hobby.
Yeah,
And
no.
So I was gonna say a lot of people have really pushed me to trying to talk to you more. So, but that's my fault, right? and so, I mean, we've had us having a conversation in Toronto, which led into this conversation we're having now. I would love to try to have you on the podcast because the one thing I will say about you is you have a endless river of knowledge, and I feel like that can create some new people in the space who can potentially, come up with new ideas, right? I think a lot of times what happened with me and Mark, and sometimes with guests, is we'll talk about all these different ideas, and we kind of foreshadow the industry. And I think by doing that, the people that are watching, who is being proactive in the space, maybe they get some ideas to maybe like to help us forward think to what the new hobby can look like. And also, other thing I think you represent too is the fact that our space is a family space, and the fact that the one thing I will say in this space, I've never had a problem with talking to anyone in terms of like getting to like you can get like I feel like in any other space, I feel like it's hard to get to someone. But in our space, like the hobby space, it's not hard to get to anybody. Everybody's really approachable.
You may not remember this, but we had a great conversation in San Diego a few years ago.
Oh, yes.
And in Toronto, and I enjoy that. I mean, for me, I love guys like you and Mark who are looking to kind of better themselves, but also the hobby. And so for me, I enjoy that. I enjoy talking about that, and I've been through it. But there's so much more that even everything I've done, I'm not satisfied. I mean, I still feel like I have a lot more to accomplish, to learn, and to kind of present out there. So anyway, my conversation with you guys, I love that, and I would love to come back and keep talking.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to, because I feel like an hour, especially when I'm not in another country. But definitely in the future. Mark, you got something else you want to say? Hopefully we get somebody else to ask some questions.
Hey, look, man. Look, our show has always been go with the flow, right? Obviously, Ralph tries to keep me kind of in a box with these topics. And honestly, this is my favorite kind of show, right? You kind of get lost in the conversation. And obviously, you have so many real life experiences that you can talk about this stuff for hours, for days. So again, I first and foremost just want to say thank you. And you talked about giving back to the hobby. I mean, just the other day, one of our followers reached out to me about he was juggling back and forth on a trade, and he just needed somebody to bounce something off of. And I don't sit here and think that I'm the know-all of everything in the hobby and able to foreshadow and think ahead, but he needed someone to bounce something off of. He gave me a call, and in 10 minutes we went back and forth, and he felt a lot more comfortable about it. And again, hopefully he doesn't come back and egg my house or TP my house or anything. But for me, and I know Ralph feels the same way. That's what it's all about, right? Interacting with folks. And obviously we're extremely approachable. So anytime someone just needs to reach out because they need just an extra opinion, right? To kind of push them over the edge one way or the other. It helps out. And yes, definitely hope that Ant-Man goes off today to help you out with that trade, Joel.
Right. All right. So, Joel, so thank you everybody that's actually chimed into the channel. Sorry we lost some people on Instagram, but make sure you guys click and subscribe to the YouTube page, to YouTube channel. Next week we have a special guest. He's going to be Miss PrizmGawds. For the first time ever, right? And we've never had Miss PrizmGawds on the channel, so first time Miss PrizmGawds, or it's going to be Cage Lawyer, and we also have DJ Ski coming up at some point in time to be a part of the channel. So it should be a couple cool guests to talk about the space. Ray, we really appreciate you, and we don't take this lightly whatsoever. And I definitely want to bring you back on when we have to extend this conversation, because I feel like we didn't hit everything we wanted to talk about, but I respect your time, and I definitely want to try to get you back on.
No, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, guys, and appreciate you guys watching and listening. Anything else you want to say, Mark?
No, I'm good, man. Thank you.
All right, appreciate you again.
If I start talking, this show will go on for another 45 minutes.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get off. I'm like, let me stop. Hey, no, I will say this. Ray, the longest show was probably with Justin Woodkaiser. He used to work for PWCC. He works for Alt now. We talked for almost 2.5 hours.
Wow, that's great.
That was like the longest conversation, but it was amazing. So it's always dope to be able to do that. It's just, I know I got to get up early, so I really want, and I hate that I should cut this short from everybody else, but this is a very special conversation for me.
No, I appreciate it. And it's all about the conversation and the community. And thank you guys. Appreciate everything.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So without that, guys, good night. And we will see you next Tuesday at the same time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I should hopefully be home by then.
Yeah, and if you're in Dallas this weekend, come by and say hello.
Yes. Yeah, you doing anything special this weekend, Ray?
I've got to go to Sacramento. I've got one of my clients, Dave Stewart, is signing in Sacramento Saturday.
Hey, so look, so I was gonna say a lot of different reasons. You remind me of myself in so many. Well, yeah, you're very similar to me. I can't say you remind me because you're older than me, but I'm just gonna say this. So, you travel a lot. I see you post a lot. Another thing, another aspect of Ray, and I know I feel like I'm continue talking, but I just want to say I'm watching. I'm paying attention. A lot of people are, and I will say this: I see you work out every day. You go for those long walks. You do the biking. This man is active, right?
Well, I mean, let me just say something, because you are absolutely correct, and I'll just say this because so many people ask me, why do you go? Why do you travel? Why do you go to these shows? And it's all about connections, making the right connections. And you know this. I mean, because we are similar in mindset, that things can happen so much easier when they get to talk to you personally, and they see that you care and that you're there, and it all comes out. So for me, it's important, to go to these shows and just talk to the people and get a feel for what's going on. It's not really to do anything other than just solidify the relationships that I've been blessed to have. So, and I know you get that, and I see you out there too. And again, seeing you in Toronto, it didn't surprise me. It really didn't. I'm thinking to myself, this guy's he understands it. He gets it, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I plan on doing more. See, I would be traveling more, even though I travel a lot, but I'm married. So
hey, he wants to stay married too.
Yeah, so I want to stay married. So a part of that is I need to stay married. So I can't. So like even this year, like I've already been in a hotel room like 75 times this year, and counting. And so like I got to figure out a way to get back home. So
yeah. But she deserves better, right?
She definitely does deserve better. So we're working on that.
That's why you're in Iceland, though, man.
That's exactly it. Because like I said before the show, what was it? Last week I went to we did the shout out to Card Carver at the Bleecker Trade Night in Cards and Coffee in New York. So we did an art event Thursday. I was there from Thursday till Saturday. Saturday night we flew to Iceland. I get back home tomorrow, and then Thursday I'm going back to Dallas. So here we go, nonstop. We continue, keep going. I haven't been slept in my own bed since last week. So
who's taking care of culture?
He said, "Oh, he's actually watching by my son. My son-in-law is he's actually watching, so it helps." Hey, but on that note, good night, guys. I appreciate you, and we will talk again.
All right, sounds good.
Should I do the thing?
Thank you, guys.
Play the music.
Take care.
Good night.